All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about functional scope. And usually when I bring this up to students, they always think of the mouthwash scope. That's not the case for this video, but what we're talking about is if we're defining variables inside of a function, do we have access to them outside of the function? Or if we create global variables, do we have access to them in the functional scope? I know we don't know what scope is, but let's go ahead and find out. So let's go into our code here. And with that being said, I do have the file folder set up as Python. We're inside the lessons folder. And inside the lessons, we have function-scope.py. That's where we're going to be living for this project here. And so basically, function scope, it's where we are creating a variable inside of a function, and it's only accessible inside of that function. We're not able to access it outside of the function, which makes it kind of interesting, but also a blessing as well, which means that if we create multiple functions that utilize the same variable name, we don't have to worry about there being any kind of conflict. So let's go ahead and do a real quick example here. And in this example, I'm just going to create a really simple function here called sum, and it's going to take two parameters or two arguments in order to add them together. So let's go ahead and do that here. So we're just going to define the function, and again, like I said, it takes two numbers. We have a new variable that we created here called total, and it equals num1 plus num2. Now let's go ahead and add a secondary function called the difference, and the only thing that we're going to change in here is going to be the plus and the minus, and then obviously the name of the function changes also. Now, what's interesting to note here is that I am utilizing the same variable name, right? Total. I'm using it here. I'm also using it here. So usually when I'm talking about this in front of a live class, I'll do something like this. I'll say, print the sum of 5 and 3, and then it's going to give us the total, right? And then what if I did print difference, and then we'll do 10 and 7. So a lot of times students will say, oh, total is going to be 5 plus 3, that's 8. So the first one gives me 8, right? So let's go ahead and save that and run it. Cool. And then the next time they run through this and they're like, okay, total's 8 now, but like, what is it going to be when we do the difference? So remember that when we're talking about scope and we're talking about creating these variables inside of a function, they are looking for those variables on the inside of the function first, meaning that, hey, we're looking at this right here inside of the function for the word total. So this right here is looking for the word total. It's looking for this num1 here. It's going for here. It's not looking outside. That's what I'm trying to get through in this lesson here. So let's go ahead and run this and save it. We do get 8, we do get 3. So it is utilizing the numbers that we supplied, and it doesn't get any confusion whatsoever with the numbers that we've used before. And again, we have reused variables inside here, but because of scope, this function right here is only looking inside here for these variables to begin with. And we're going to show you an example of creating a global variable and being able to reference it inside of a function as well. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. All right, so let's talk about the global scope, and this is just a new little term here for us to understand and retain here, because functional scope, we're dealing with functions. Global scope, we're dealing with things that are outside of the functions. And what do we mean by global variables? Well, what if I were to do something like this? I'll do total equals 15. So let's have a function here, and I'm going to reuse the same functions, and in order for this to work for us, we're definitely going to have to highlight the code and run it. But I'm going to do another function here we'll do a sum, num1, num2, and this time I want to go ahead and do the print, and then we'll do 5 and 3. And then I also want to print the total here. So this is going to get a little bit interesting, and then we're going to show you a little bit of a workaround on how to deal with altering global variables and things of that nature. So again, I'm going to have to highlight this code in order to get this to work because we already have a function name up above called sum. But if we highlight the code and hit the run button, notice that we get total equals 8 inside of the function, and then we get the total on the outside of the function. It's referencing the global one. Now we can't simply alter the code as of this and say, you know what, let's just go ahead and do total equals total plus num1 plus num2 and see what we get here. Let's go ahead and highlight this and run it. We're going to get an error, and that's because it's saying, hey, we don't know what this total is. It's nowhere defined inside of this function here. So one of the workarounds, and this is the one that's kind of frowned upon using, is the following. What if we were to type the word global and then put the word total in here? And so now we're telling this function, hey, you know what? We need to reference the global variable first, and then let's go ahead and utilize this function. And so now we get 23 for the total that's getting calculated inside of the function. And notice that when we print the total now, we do get the total no longer being 15, it is now 23. So they're now equal. We just told this function, hey, use that global total and alter the total. Now, this may be bad practice. How are some ways that we can get around this? So let's go ahead and try another example here of a way to alter a global variable but still have the function alter it. So let's look at that without using that keyword global. So we have this, and let's go ahead and do the following. We're going to create, it's almost like a bowling application here where we need to update the score. So it's going to take the current score, and then we're going to apply points to it. So this time we're supplying it with the information. So let's look at this. We're first going to create a global variable called current score. And with the current score being 50, we are now calling this function here update score. It's going to come in here, and we're supplying it with the current score, and then we're also supplying it with how many points do we want added to the score. So then we come in here, the score is 50, right? 50 plus 10, it equates to 60, and it returns the score. And notice that we're doing this properly by updating a global variable here based upon a function. Pretty interesting, right? And this would be a good solution as an alternative than calling out the global inside of the function. Okay. So for best practices here, we're going to be utilizing this. All right, let's go ahead and save, run this, and you'll see that we do in fact get 60 for that updated score. All right, now scope is going to be something that's always going to be around you. It's always going to be thought of whenever you're doing some of these projects and when you're coding, right? So it's just be really vigilant in your coding practices to know, hey, do I need this to be a global variable? Okay, well, does the function need to access that global variable, and so on. So like I said, we have a couple practice examples below this module for you to go over. So we'll see you in the next video.